But the thing is, academia was intellectual challenge, academic freedom, you publish, and then you've got someone else talking to you about, okay, intellectual property, patent, you don't disclose. And these terms that they're thinking like, what the hell? But I never had a mentor for myself till early this year.
Wow.
And it is fantastic. I've always advocated for it, but you help others and you just end up not having one for yourself.
Yeah.
So regardless of socioeconomic background, your ethnic background, anything, gender, anything, it is where you have the opportunity to be the best version of yourself, and you're encouraged to do that.
Hello there, I'm Sarah McCluskey, and this is Research Adjacent. Each episode, I talk to amazing research adjacent professionals about what they do and why it makes a difference. Keep listening to find out why we think the research adjacent space is where the real magic happens. Hello there, I'm your host Sarah McCluskey, and I'm delighted to introduce you to my guest today, Anji Miller. Anji is Senior Partner for Academic Engagement at tech transfer charity LifeArc. With the wonderfully concise tagline from bench to bedside, LifeArc are focused on helping turn great research into real-world healthcare products. With a PhD in gene therapy and a master's in intellectual property law, Anji is perfectly placed for her role, which includes advising and training researchers on things like intellectual property and patents. Anji didn't have the smoothest start. Careers advisors and family members were bemused by her aspirations to become a scientist, but she persevered and found her stride at university. This experience has made her a passionate advocate for mentoring EDI and STEM initiatives, meaning that the next generation will benefit from the role models and support that she lacked. We talk about self-belief even in the face of disappointments, making the most of opportunities and seeing the real-world impact of her work, whether that's on patients or the researchers that she has trained and mentored. Listen on to hear Anji's story. Welcome along to the podcast, Anji. It is fantastic to meet you. I wonder if we could start by telling me and our guests a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I'm Anji Miller. My current role, the title is Senior Partner for Academic Engagement at LifeArc. LifeArc is an independent UK-based healthcare charity that's just focused on getting great academic research from bench to bedside. So my role is transformed over the time. So my background is I'm trained as a scientist. So it is, and for a long time I was a scientist. And what I decided to do was use my scientific knowledge out of the lab. So I help get innovation from bench to bedside. I'm that person that combines the IP aspect, the business aspect, that goes beyond the publications. Mm-hmm. It is where I work at the intersection of industry, academia, but also over time, because I like working with others and I like sharing knowledge with others, I also train others to do this as well. So it's quite a nice role. It's niche, but it's a nice role and it's impactful.
Yeah, I bet it is impactful. I love that story of from bench to bedside. That's just such a lovely kind of catchphrase, encapsulates what you do. So you say your role is academic engagement on a kind of day-to-day basis. What does that mean? What sorts of things are you doing? Who are you working with?
Yeah, it varies a lot. A lot is working with, because I do a lot of the training and now really setting up programs, and that's globally to ensure that basically innovations, technology gets out of the lab and impacts society. It could vary from, for example, yesterday I was on a panel talking about STEM, talking about careers and the wide option that individuals who study science have. And this was to encourage individuals of underrepresented groups. And that was lovely. But also what I do is I'll be engaging with groups and really researchers from sub-Saharan Africa through another fellowship. And it will be adding that translational piece so that they understand the business side of running their own group and their own project to ensure it gets beyond the lab. The currency of academia is publication, but there's another side to really ensure that it truly is impactful. And that's that side really looking, can I protect anything? Who can take it to market? And how can they do it? And how can I feed in?
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you go about finding these projects that you work on? Do you go out and find them, or do they come to you?
Most of the time, it's where they come to me. It is where it may be a program that LifeArc is a key player for, and it is where a key supporter of the program, and there's that translational piece that needs to be brought in. So that's where they will come to our team and say, we want to ensure that these researchers understand how they can translate their science, but also having a look what infrastructure is required within wherever they are, that supports it. So it is very much a collaborative aspect, but also a lot of the time it could be researchers who are looking and thinking, what do I do next? Here, I enjoy what I'm doing, but I want to have a look. How can my career move along, or how can I feed into doing something to really ensure that those who need it get the science that I have?
Yeah.
And it could be talking about career paths. It could be talking about just skills. It could be just providing that additional voice, that support, that mentorship that's required for someone to really explore their passions.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually figure out, as you say, I think there's some people get into research because they just love the research and they love the kind of discovery of it. But some people very definitely go into research because they think, I want to help with this medical condition, or actually do something that makes a difference in the world. But that journey can be a real mental shift, can't it? To go from being in a university and maybe you're trying to get grants for funding and for research and things like that, to then suddenly producing something that you can get accredited and sell to customers. It's a real shift, isn't it?
And I think life throws so many curveballs at you that you do change, you transform over time. And we live in a day and age where a career is not just one thing and you do that one thing until you retire.
Yeah.
You will mature and your skills will develop. We're living in a day and age where gene therapy, which is my background, it was science fiction not that long ago. Now it's a reality, but we have to ensure that everyone can have access to it. So I think as individuals develop their career and they mature, they have different responsibilities, their drivers and their passions shift slightly. Things that happen and individuals impacted in different ways will really shape what their ambitions are. So sometimes they'll think, okay, I'm really interested in this and I'd like to combine it with, is that a thing? Half are quite scared to ask the question. Others are fearful in how everyone will perceive it. And what I do a lot of the time is help those individuals to realize it's not just a pipe dream. It's something that can become a reality. And just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, or you shouldn't pave a way for it.
Yeah, definitely helping people to just see the possibilities. I think so often as well that, and that's part of what this whole podcast is about, is helping people to see the possibilities, because particularly when you're at school, it's really hard to know what's out there in the world. And then even when you go to university and you start to get a bit more of a sense, but it's still, you're very much shaped by the people that you see, the role models that you see, the situations that you find yourself in. And so it can sometimes be really hard to conceive of something different. And that's why that mentorship and advice is so valuable.
Absolutely. And school visits are one of my favorites because children, there's no filter. You get everything raw, and they are clever. They feed in, they see every aspect. They tap into your passions. They can see that you're fired up when you're talking about whatever subject. But also they will come in and they will ask you the questions that even their colleagues didn't know that they were into this thing. They just want to know because they're learning. This is when they absorb everything that you say. So when I go in, I usually have a rough idea of what I'm going to talk about. But the minute I go in there and I start talking, I know that I'm going to have questions coming from every direction. And it's fantastic because I know, even from my experience, one good teacher can really set you on a path for life.
Yeah.
And it really, or it can break you down. And you will have so many challenges that it's in your head that you were told you can never do this, or that's not for you, rather than go for it.
Yeah.
And I think with young minds, it's more of what you do and what they see than what you say.
Yeah. Yeah. And so is that your story then? Was there a particular teacher that either encouraged you or perhaps formed you in some other way?
Coming from first generation British Jamaican family, so I'm the first generation that was born in the UK. My parents, they were very big on education, and it was where they just told me, never set a limit on your ambitions. So that was instilled in me, and it was really where education is key. And I still carry that. Education is key. But even when they would ask, and you get these aunts and uncles always asking, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And you say scientist, you can see it clouds over where they're thinking scientist. That's not quite doctor. It's not quite lawyer. And as it is with these backgrounds. But my parents always don't limit yourself. But I do remember, and this is why it's so important that we are very careful by what we say to our young minds around us. I do remember that when I mentioned that I wanted to be a scientist, I do remember having a careers teacher who was very dismissive about that ambition. And it was almost as though now when I look back, it was that this individual obviously didn't know anything about the career path, but also there was nothing supportive, nothing encouraging. But I've spoken to so many since then, and they've had the same experience, and decades younger than me, and they're still having those sort of experiences. For me, it was really where I think I'm the type of person, because I've had so many disappointments and knockbacks, it does hurt. And you do stay there nursing your wounds. But it does also cause something in me to rise even stronger and even more determined to just, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to find a way to do it. I don't care what this person said or what they think. I know what I want to do. And I think it's best that I go down trying than sitting there thinking, okay, no, then go for it. And it's always in hindsight, people say that, oh, why did you choose this path? Why did you do these things? Sometimes it's really where you took the opportunities that were there at the time. It looks as though it's a carefully curated pathway, but it really was, you were in a position that those were the best options. So you made the most of them.
Yeah.
They turned out to be the best options. But at the time, you were really trying to navigate to whatever goal or whatever target. So I would encourage anyone, when you have your dreams and ambitions, don't hide them. But also when someone is not supportive, do not take it personally. Use that as the fuel to really carry on, because you know yourself better than anyone else. And school, yes, you do spend most of your time there, and you would hope the individuals in charge of you see that. But someone that you meet in a snapshot who's supposed to advise you on something that they're ill-informed on is not going to give you the best advice. So it's really remembering that. And I think it's really, we should always encourage each other to really just try, go for it. And I think that's the message that I try to give to others. And I think one of the nicest things is when you see that you've spoken to someone and they really do take it on board, and you see them soaring, you see them going from one height to another, and they pay it forward because they remember the generosity, the advice that you gave them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that leads us really nicely onto the path that you took then. So you had this vision that maybe confused your family, and the careers advisor was a bit like, okay. And you went and did it. Tell us a bit about how you did it.
The thing is, I loved school. I come from a big family, so I'm used to being around individuals. And I When I tell people this, they're quite surprised that I was painfully shy. And it is, sometimes I talk a lot, but the thing is that sometimes I do go very quiet. I love studying other people, but I loved being at school. I loved learning from that early age, but also I enjoyed science. At school, I enjoyed the lessons and everything, but I think academically, when I look back, the exams and how the exams were set were not the easiest things. When I really started to flourish was when I was at university. And my first degree is in applied biology, and it was a modular degree. And I remember thinking, wow, my parents were so happy because I was going to university, and this is something I've been talking about all the time, on track to be a scientist. And for them, I think it was just really pleased that out of the kids, there's only 2 girls and there's 6 boys. And it is where I'm going to university and I'm going to have a career. For me, it was really where I started to come alive. And I think it is where also that's when I started to have my own voice, because you have to speak out. There's no one else there talking for you. But I did an industrial year, so a year in industry, 6 months in France and 6 months in Italy, working in the labs. And I found that I had a natural ability of working in the labs. I loved it, designing my experiments, having a main hypothesis that you're going to prove and working towards that. I did amazingly. And I came back with renewed energy for my final year, which I did very well in as well. But I also realized that I liked the molecular side of things. And I always, as a scientist, it was for me, the natural thing, I'm going to complete a PhD. But I was very ambitious in knowing what I wanted it to be in, and that was in gene therapy. At the time, gene therapy was very hot, and you wouldn't have PhD placements or anything. So when I spoke to a lecturer, they did advise me, and they said, this is great that you know that you have a strength for it, but apply for a master's as well as a backup, just in case you need more time. And it worked out really well. Cut a long story short, it is where I did find a lab and we applied for funding, and I managed to do my PhD in cancer gene therapy at Imperial. But I had to take a master's in human molecular genetics during the time when I was looking and sending out and turning down. Also, at some point, I did think, what was I doing? Turning down PhD offers.
Wow.
Because I was going for the subject that I wanted to. By the time I completed my PhD, I'd been in the lab for something like 7 years, and I knew that I did not want to stay in the lab. I wanted to go further. Yeah. And it was an exposure to some of the technology that was protected in the lab that I had, what's this technology transfer, innovation? What is that? Because I knew I wanted to use what I had and continue building on it. And essentially, that's what I did. After 3 degrees, I went back and did a master's in intellectual property law.
Oh, goodness.
And it was really one of the best things that I'd done that everyone thought I was crazy for. There was a laughter, there was a joke at home, the perpetual student. But the thing is, it was really where it was amazing to apply the way I approach things and bring in that legal aspect. And ever since then, I haven't looked back, really. It's been working towards and roles involving curating great translational research to really ensure that they move further along that development pathway to interventions that will be the next diagnostics and therapeutics that we have today.
Yeah, I can see why that combination of both the PhD in the biological side of things and then the master's in the intellectual property would make you a very employable person in the knowledge transfer environment, because certainly, although there's another podcast series that I do called Academic Adventures, and that's all about spin-outs and startups and things like that. And this intellectual property thing just comes up again and again and again as one of the most challenging things about getting things up and running. Yeah, having that knowledge.
It's almost as though it's seen as the arch enemy to publication, but you can have both if the strategy and timing is right. Yeah. So it does mean working very closely with the teams and really gaining that trust so that they trust you, that they are going to have that publication, which they need to have. Yeah. But at the same time, for it to go further, you need to really protect whatever's there, the intellectual assets within that research.
And you mentioned back in the conversation when we were initially talking about helping to inspire people on their career journey, you spoke about the importance of mentoring. Is that something that has personally been important to you?
This is the strange thing. Sometimes I'm on a panel and we're talking about different aspects, particularly women empowerment and things like that. And someone said, it's okay if I have coffee. And you end up really informally being a mentor for that. And I have formally joined like some mentoring programs. And one of the things I also run is 2 fellowships, different types, but they have the same mission of individuals with STEM backgrounds to become innovation professionals. And one of the big USPs is that mentoring aspect to get the mind in the right shape and frame. But I never had a mentor for myself till early this year.
Wow.
And it is fantastic. I've always advocated for it, but you help others and you just end up not having one for yourself.
Yeah.
And it was just something that I said, okay, this is one of the things that I'm going to do for myself, because I believe in lifelong learning. And I work in the innovation space where you have to keep abreast of everything. So one of the things I thought, okay, definitely, I want to have this for myself. And for me, it was for a particular aspect to really feed in is the strategy and plan that I have the optimal one for myself.
Yeah.
For others, it will be where I'll bring in like a peer level mentor, someone who has a lived experience and has tread that path. And then I'll bring in someone who is an expert to really get that knowledge about whatever ecosystem that person is working in. But I do believe in doing that. And I think it's something that you can easily do within one conversation or an ongoing relationship.
Yes. Yeah. I think sometimes mentoring doesn't need to be as structured or formal as perhaps we think it might be. But yeah, that's interesting that you've not had one yourself until this year.
I know. It's strange.
It's not finding quite the right person, or?
I think it was, at first it was something that I just didn't even think about, because I knew that to fulfill my role, this is what this person needs. And my focus was on that. It was only after a while thinking, I could do with one. Then it was the difficulty. How do you select the mentor? And I believe that it's not going to be a mentor for life, although some relationships are like that. A lot of the time, it's that stage that you're in, that phase, or that particular need. And I think it's different for each person. The plan is going to be very different for each person, but also the personalities. For me, I'm very outspoken, and it is where someone who is not going to accept being questioned, or why do you say that, or wanting to know more, it's really, they're going to feel as though I'm trying to pull things that they probably feel uncomfortable telling me. But as a mentor, I hope that they would.
Yes, that's what you want. You want a little bit of, maybe not brutal honesty, but definitely honesty from a mentor.
Because when I do, and also, it's not that they're going to tell you what to do, but they're going to open your mind so you think and make your own choice. And I think that's the important thing. So even when I'm preparing someone for that, they're going to have a mentor and they've never had one, it is where I will outline and give them an idea and let them know that this is a guide. What you need is going to be individual to you.
Yeah.
So you work on that relationship and hopefully it will work out. But if not, let me know, and maybe there needs to be a change.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds, from the way you've been speaking, it sounds like the point you're at now, that relationships are almost more important in the work that you do now than the actual science. Would that be a fair thing to say?
It's not more important than, but they do go hand in hand. And I think even to be really a good innovation professional, you will have to have good relationships, because you have to gain the trust of the researcher. And in academia, there's a passion to that work, that someone could be working on that area for decades. Why would they trust you with this? Talking about this aspect that the structure is not quite fluid with regards to innovation. It's changing now, but the thing is, academia was intellectual challenge, academic freedom, you publish, and then you've got someone else talking to you about, okay, intellectual property, patent, don't disclose, and these terms that they're thinking, like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So you do have to have the relationship so that can happen. But also when you're training someone to really be able to do this, you have to be able to tap into who they are. So you have to be able to communicate. And also the needs, I advocate a lot, whether it's for EDI or the profession, you have to be able to communicate. So it does change it slightly where you are not as hands-on as you were before with being there and dealing with all the science, but you still have to understand the science and you still have to understand the needs. So it really does start rolling in. And as more things come in that you're rolling into your role, it does dilute each aspect because it's a combination of those things.
Yeah. I wonder, it'd be lovely to hear about maybe one or two examples of projects that you've worked on in so much as, like you say, intellectual property confidentiality, in so much as you're able to say publicly. But yeah, some things that really stand out.
I've worked with amazing scientists, some really well known, others in their sector, they are amazing. They're the top dog, but also amazing individuals. And those are the ones that really stand out the most because there's your job and then there's that extra piece. And that's that relationship piece where they will say to you, Angie, I'm thinking about blah, blah, blah. And it's, let's do it. Let's make it happen. I remember one of my first roles, and that was at St. George's, and it's a hospital medical school. And because it's a hospital medical school, you get great translational research. You've got the clinical aspect, and it is really where it's moving away from the bench. It's really getting to the patients, whether that's through clinical trials or whatever. And one of them was a really big consortium, and it was funded by some of the top funders, but also one of the leading researchers in that area. And I remember when I got this role, it was where they said, when the director who interviewed me, she was like, it's going to be really challenging. Are you sure you want a challenge? And I said, yes, tell me about it. Because she was really afraid that I was going to run away from it. It ended up being one of the most enjoyable things that I've done because it was, I think, enjoyable because the researcher who I was working with was such a humble person, but an amazing mind. But what he was doing was going to impact really not just the global north, but definitely the globe and everyone else in those areas that are underrepresented. And there was a need that surpasses anything else. And for me, it meant also applying everything. So I was negotiating agreements, working with external partners, industry and academia, and then also really outlining, okay, this is how we're going to work together. It was a massive project.
Yeah.
But it was amazing because it was the first time that I really could flex the combination of skills that I put together at that time and know that it was going to lead to something really impactful.
Yeah.
Other projects that come to mind, it's like even at LifeArc, dealing with some of the tech, because we work with and we support conditions, really treating and addressing unmet healthcare needs in the rare disease space. So these are populations that are not attractive because it's a smaller market
number,
a lot of the time to industry, where you can see and you understand the real needs, and you work with clinicians who have clinics. So they see the patients on a daily basis, and you're moving that technology closer to being something that's going to be available as a treatment. That is hugely impactful because you can see the difference that you make. Because for me, it's also talking about it and advocating for that disease area. So it means if it may lead to more funding, it may highlight it so it's more attractive for others to work in, but also the amazing work that's being done by that group, that small community addressing it. I think also it brings hope to the patient group. Yeah. The patient voice is really important. And it's something that through my role, you get close to that and understanding really what it's like for a family. It's devastating, but what they have to go through. But you want them to know there's hope. There are individuals working to really make sure that hopefully in time, there will be a treatment or possibly a cure, whatever they are going through. I think the last one and the most recent, I say most recent, is because I still do it. And it is, I talked about my career journey from going from bench to using my science outside of the bench. When I just started, and I started advocating for it over a decade ago, But it is where there's no clear path for someone who wants to do this. And also it's not well known that you can, as a STEM graduate, you have plethora of roles that you can go into. So me with my big mouth is, I think we need to have something. And luckily I was working with someone who was like, okay, what we're going to do, and I designed a fellowship, and it was the first one of the two that I run also. And it was for individuals with a STEM background who enjoy science and are passionate about it. They wanted to be scientists for a reason. And regardless of how much experience they have, it is that they want to pivot, help get that technology really to becoming something that's going to have real world impact. And it means bringing in that business and legal and all those professional transferable skills that are required in that space. And you do this through a year. But I work with partners in the sector to deliver this program. And now it's over 9 years. And seeing the individuals, and it's one of them, the very first one is open to everyone in Europe. But seeing the individuals forge their careers, and they have, particularly in some of the spaces, it's the first innovation office that's going to be set up that's going to address anything like that. It is something that, when you're thinking, yes, I wasn't crazy.
Yeah.
And sometimes there is something that can come out of someone just saying, okay, how is it going to be? How are you going to do it? It does mean that you put a lot of work into it, because for a long time it was something in addition to my main role. Now, luckily, it's part of my main role. But it is something that I am hugely proud of, because it will go on. And the individuals that it's 100 and something fellows on last count. And they tap in and they feed into that program as peer mentors alongside the expert mentors that I mentioned. And it is something that, when you're thinking, okay, if this was my last day, I know that it's something that I would look on and say, I'm very glad that I did
that. Yeah. That's a lovely thing to be able to have in your portfolio of things that you've done. I do like to ask all of my guests on the podcast, if they had a magic wand, what would they change about the world that they work in? If money and time was no object.
There's so many things. I think because it's at the crux, and from my lived experience, the challenges that I've faced in even trying to forge my own career as a Black female scientist, it's not been easy. Particularly, you want to step out and do something that when you're describing the career, people are looking at you, one, half of them don't know what it is, and others are looking at you thinking, really? They doubt it. I think it would be that we would live in a world where it's inclusive, and rather than inclusivity just being something that it's really an act that you do, it falls in really as part of everyday life. It's really, truly, it would be. So regardless of socioeconomic background, your ethnic background, anything, gender, anything, it is where you have the opportunity to be the best version of yourself, and you're encouraged to do that. And it would mean that you wouldn't have rare conditions, no one is interested in it, or no one's even thinking, okay, what about this population? You would have individuals globally being able to become skilled and change the world that they come from, or they live in, or they care about. I think it would be ultimately a world where I wouldn't need the wand.
Yes.
Because it is where, or I'd use it on something else. Because it would be fair, it would be equitable. And I think in my world, I see the good in everyone. And I'll try and bring that out, and I'll try and really encourage them to adopt that mentality. And it's really where they adopt. And when I talk to the young minds, like my daughter, she knows that I'm a staunch EDI advocate. But the thing is also, it's not just what I say, it's what I do. And I'd like to a world where everyone just has that one thing. And I think it would change so many things.
I think it really would, wouldn't it? And that is an amazing vision, I think, perhaps to leave our conversation on that world vision. If anybody wants to find out more about the work that you do, get in touch with you, where is the best place to find you?
Oh, they can find me on the LifeArc website, but also LinkedIn. That's my Rolodex. It is where, and a lot of the time, messages and whatever, and also to see what I do. They can see for themselves.
Fantastic.
Hopefully I encourage someone somewhere.
Yeah, no, I hope so too. I'm sure lots of people will be inspired by your story. Thank you so much for taking the time to come along and tell us all about it. It's been fantastic.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to Research Adjacent. If you're listening in a podcast app, please check you're subscribed and then use the links in the episode description to find full show notes and to follow the podcast on LinkedIn or Instagram. You can also find all the links and other episodes at www.researchadjacent.com. Research Adjacent is presented and produced by Sarah McCluskey, and the theme music is by Lemon Music Studios on Pixabay. And you, yes you, get a big gold star for listening right to the end. See you next time.